Much to the local organizing committee for the invitation to speak at Bowen University. To me, it's a great pleasure to be in Nigeria. When I was studying abroad, I think every time everybody guessed which country I would come from, they would say, "Are you from Nigeria?" And then I would have to disappoint them. But I felt very close to Nigeria because as I've grown up, all of us are exposed to a lot of Nigerian literature. I grew up really admiring Wole Soyinka. And so when I was passing, I saw the map, I saw Abeokuta, I said, okay, this is very nice. I'm coming close to where a lot of good Africans have come from and inspirational Africans. And I'm hoping that we will do our bit. I liked what the VC said, that we should be driving our research agenda. And so today, I know the theme is births. And what I'll be speaking about is how we can leverage artificial intelligence for conservation. And in particular, I want to talk about building robust research ecosystems. So when you're in ecology, when you think of an ecosystem, you think about, the home of organisms and the interplay of various factors. But I'm also thinking about how we can create a place where a lot of research happens and happens in a sustainable way and produces research which is of impact to our local setting. I liked the focus on us deciding, if I'm in Bowen, what is important here? And as opposed to just going wherever the wind blows and wherever some donor funders think is important. If a certain area is important, let us drive the agenda. And let us build the ecosystems which will take that research direction forward. So my name is actually Shira. If you want to pronounce it like my ancestors properly, you'll say Shira. And Shira means, in my local, I'm from the central part of Kenya, and a Shira is really almost like a court case, a place where people have sat around to deliberate. Almost like this, but sometimes they are really serious matters. So when you see me a bit stunned, it's because the name comes from serious deliberations. And Maina is my father, so I'm technically Shira wa Maina. Maina is my dad. And I teach electrical engineering at Dedan Kimathi University of Technology in Nyeri. Nyeri is very close actually to my ancestral home. I'm also on the board of this organization we call Data Science Africa, which does capacity building in the area of AI, machine learning. And I lead now the small example of a research ecosystem that I'll be talking about is this lab we call the Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence, DSAIL, at DKUT. DKUT is an abbreviation for Dedan Kimathi University of Technology. So, yeah, so I want us to think about the fact that as Africans, I feel, when we talk about conservation, Africans have known how to interact with nature for millennia sustainably. And therefore, I feel that when we discuss conservation, what we should be trying to do is reaching back to a lot of our ancient ancestral knowledge. How is it that the picture you see there is of an Ogiek man harvesting honey in the forest? The current situation now is that people such as him are being kept out of habitats like those in the name of conservation, okay? But however, this individual doesn't harm the trees, but lives sustainably with them. And I think if we are true to ourselves, just like was mentioned, we would be able to guide conservation research, ecology research in a way that will ensure that there is a sustainable exploit. Because I believe natural resources need to be exploited. The issue is exploiting them sustainably. And how can we leverage all this knowledge we have in ecology, in even artificial intelligence, as I'll be describing, to ensure that how we extract is sustainable, how we interact with the environment is sustainable. And we don't need, actually now, conservation is in the headlines all the time. We are being told that we face an existential threat. I don't know about Nigeria, but in Kenya, we are just coming out of an almost 3-year drought. So extreme weather events are becoming more common. And the thing is, everywhere is impacted, whether it's us in Africa, everywhere in the world. Those are the floods in Mozambique. There were recent floods again in Malawi. So every year now, these things which used to be extreme are now becoming, I wonder if you can call them extreme anymore if they occur, you know. And even on the flight here, I came and I was just perusing the in-flight magazine. And the in-flight magazine on Kenya Airways is called Msafiri for Traveler. And they were saying 5 ways to protect planet Earth. So everywhere you're bombarded by how we should conserve. So what are their suggestions? You can read some of them there. So there's an issue about tree planting, nature-based enterprises, fundraising, which talks about what you were talking about before. Anyway, the point here is that conservation is high on everybody's mind, okay? And then on the right, there's a picture of a lady who's involved in conservation of primates. And this is in an in-flight magazine on a flight here. So this is a real topical issue. What I would, before I now go into a bit of our approach to this problem, is for us to always remember that we are wholly dependent on nature. There's no two ways about it. And we need we need healthy ecosystems for sustenance. I know here I believe this is southwestern Nigeria is Yoruba country. And I was reading this book by Teju Cole, and it's written, "Every day is for the thief." And you know that proverb, every day is for the thief, but one day is for the owner. Nature is the owner. Nature is the owner, and when nature comes to collect, nature will collect. And we cannot keep doing what is not right. We have to do what is right. Okay, so how does AI come into the picture? And when I was perusing the abstract, I realized that maybe not everybody in the room may be familiar with AI, but you interact with it all the time. How many have interacted with ChatGPT? That's a key thing now. You interact with Google search all the time, right? Maybe you interact with your phone via speech, right? So some of that is applications of AI. But also, a lot of you will be biologists, and so you do statistics, right? And a lot of AI really builds on the interaction between data and an appropriate model to come out with interesting predictions. That is what AI is about. The interplay between data, models, mediated by computation to come up with predictions. So your ChatGPT will be predicting given some prompt, what text should I generate, all right? Things like that. So that's AI. But now I want to show you a few applications of AI in the conservation realm. I view the role of AI as being part of a multidisciplinary approach to conservation. So AI can help us do the following. Once we collect lots of data, being able to make sense of that data will be the role of AI. And AI here mainly in what we call machine learning, in the realm of machine learning. And it will make sense of large amounts of data that are coming from remote sensing, sensor networks, and traditional surveys. So all this needs to happen in the context of a research ecosystem. And as I was telling you, I think we need to make sure that African universities are at the forefront and that we create local teams of researchers that are actually involved in the basic science of conservation and of ecology and such things. As was being said in response to the multidisciplinary nature of bat ecology, you can be a chemist and involved in bat research. So on that picture you see, this is the research group I lead. And it's essentially a group of young scientists, young undergraduates, master's students, mainly that level. And I'll be trying to show you some of the work they've done in this area.
You want to do something in the office? Let's go.
Okay, so one area we've been looking at is this area of ecosystem monitoring. And so one of the things we've tried to do, and I think what I had done was I had put the picture of the student who was involved in this project. Is called Gabriel Carrier. So what we've been able to do is to try and improve, explore this area of bioacoustic research. Bioacoustics really is this idea that if I am in an ecosystem, the organisms inside that ecosystem produce sound, often. And you can use that sound to identify which species are in a particular ecosystem. And if you are able to then do a long longitudinal study, you can be able to determine which species are present when, right? And so with that idea, what we were able to do, Gabriel developed this acoustic recorder you see, and we are able to put it in ecosystems and collect data. So the first thing when you want to apply anything related to AI is you need to solve the data problem. You need to have just to use this example of ChatGPT, they'll tell you it was trained on the entire internet. So what that tells you is that there was a lot of data to make it work. AI needs data. So you need to develop systems that will collect data. So the first thing we needed to do was, we are going by the hypothesis that we will want to listen to the ecosystem and determine what's going on there, what species are present, for example, and when they are present, right? So we need to develop sensor systems that we will deploy into the field, live there for long periods of time, because there are solutions that exist, but they come with various limitations. So here we developed something that was charged by solar that we could live almost indefinitely in the field and just collect, as the limit would be capacity of storage. And what we would need to do is also compare. So what we would do is we put a sensor out and listen out to what we are hearing. We were focusing on bird species, birds, not bats. And we want to compare. The traditional way to survey birds is to go there and perform point counts. And when you do a point count, do you get the same result as when you do it using an acoustic recorder? And then the thing that will happen is that this acoustic data, will be the input to AI models, which will then be able to do that automatically for us. So our job will be to deploy the system, collect the data, feed the data into the AI tells us, okay, I can hear a Hatlabs turaku, I can hear a tropical bubu, and I had it at this point, I had it over these periods of time. So that's bioacoustics. So what we did is we did a study in the Mount Kenya ecosystem. So this is Mount Kenya, this is Kenya. So right down here is the Mount Kenya National Park. So this is a bit of a blow up. And right down here is our university, Dedan Kimathi University of Technology. So we went in here, and what we did is we were right deep in the bush. We would deploy acoustic recorders like you see there. This is really difficult terrain. So to get data, you really need to do field work. And so we would hike, cross rivers, etc., and deploy these acoustic recorders. These recorders were actually the precursor to the audio moth, which I'll discuss later, which maybe some of you know. And we would collect data, and at each of these locations, we would also do traditional point counts. So, one of the species that is very interesting in the Mount Kenya ecosystem is this species called the Hatlabs turacu. And the reason it's interesting is because it's very sensitive to the fragmentation of its forest habitat. And also, in Kenya, anecdotally, you would have had it in even very low, in near Nairobi. But due to fragmentation, it's also sensitive to temperature. So anecdotally, it's not being found in the lower laying areas that it was found before because the temperatures are rising, anecdotally. And so we would like to test such hypothesis. Is it actually rising up? And you know, as it tries to go into higher altitudes, what will end up happening also is that its food will no longer be available. So there's a bit of a tension there. So some of the data we get is recording. So I want to play you a recording. So this is a Hatlabs turacu. You hear that? Huh? That rough sound, almost like a primate. And then you hear other sounds, anthropogenic sounds. So this is the kind of data we collect. Just a little bit of. So this is a recording of a tropical. So that's a tropical boo-boo. Tropical boo-boo, yes. And anyway, so all these sounds are very easy to determine from the audio, and you can then be able to use machine learning to determine what species are there. So what happens is, what you'd need to do is turn the sound into a picture. And these are what we call spectrograms. And from this spectrogram, you can be able to then tell what species it is, because even visually you can tell. So just like you've seen AI systems which can say, okay, what I'm seeing what I'm actually looking at is a chair, is a computer. I can look at that spectrogram and say this spectrogram belongs to the brown woodland warbler, for example. Okay? So that's the whole idea. Take the audio and be able to process it and be able to then say what's happening in the ecosystem, right? When we do this over long periods of time and over a sufficient scale. Okay, and really then we would do, these are traditional machine learning techniques. We can also do what is exploit, I don't know if any of you know about Xenocanto. You do? Yeah, so people, okay, that's very nice. So we are also able to exploit data that's been contributed by citizen scientists and use that to train models that we can then deploy in our local context, okay? Right, so and then you're able to find its performance. This is standard machine learning methodology to look at precision, recall, and F1 score, and then see whether you can deploy these systems into the wild. So, okay. So, since I was coming to a BAT conference, luckily, a year ago, we began a little work on BAT bioacoustics. And the student you see here is he's called Mohinia. And the work really came from a visit we had with Mark Keith from University of Pretoria. And what we were able to do was to deploy these audio mods within our campus. And the audio mod, the good thing is that it can sample up to 250 kilohertz. So since it's sampling up to 250 kilohertz, you'll see that those of you who know some DSP, it can resolve up to 125 kilohertz, half. And I believe, I'll have to talk to Dr. Webala, whether it's accurate to say that we will be able to get a lot of bats in that range. Absolutely. So, verified. So, so what we were able to do, I actually did not know there were that many bats in our campus. But Mark deployed these sensors. We then put on our signal processing hats. You see on the right a spectrogram, and we have some potential bat activity here. And then the next thing to do is to then determine regions of interest. And this we believe are the parameters that are interesting. The maximum frequency, the minimum frequency, interpulse duration, call duration. Then you can compute the slope. And then essentially this is the machine learning approach we are using. It's something called unsupervised machine learning. Unsupervised machine learning works on the idea that you do not have labeled data, but you have a lot of data which you believe perhaps has some structure within it. So for example, here we are going by the hypothesis that different species will vocalize differently, but there is enough, or echolocate, that's what I should say. It will echolocate differently, but there is sufficient similarity between the echolocation calls of species that if we put them all in one basket, we will be able to classify them. It's something called clustering. So if you do that to the recordings in Dedan Kimathi, you find interesting characteristics like this one and this one. And then, so these are potentially two different species, potentially. And then we need to ask Prof here to come to DCUT. Do you agree? But we end up with a way of saying potentially these are the clusters, right? That's unsupervised machine learning. So these are some of the things we've been able to do. Something else we've been looking at, and I'm showing this because this is an idea of even locally you can do a lot of interesting things. So we have a conservancy at DCUT. It has a number of species. So what we did is we designed camera traps based off of this device called the Raspberry Pi, which is like a computer, and we're able to deploy it in the field. And our idea is really, we know these technologies exist, but we need to be able to develop them locally and cheaply, all right? And then, so we were proving that we could develop our own local camera traps, deploy it in the field, and collect interesting images, okay? So we have a conservancy, and a lot of this was done by a number of people, including Lorna, who you see a picture of there. And we were able to annotate over 8,000 images of animal species. And here is what you could do with this. You could do some ecological monitoring, because if you've deployed your camera traps in a certain array, you'll be able to detect presence or absence. So you can do some rudimentary species modeling or range. I'll need the right term from my ecologist friends. But okay, so this was the kind of species. There are waterbucks, warthogs, some zebra, impala are very common, and waterbucks also. So all this is within walking distance from our university. And what use is this? Once a lot of camera trap data needs to be analyzed by human annotators, right? We want to use AI to reduce the time. So you can do that by screening data for common species. For example, the impala. So that you focus the interest of the ecologist on some species which may be rarer. So in this case, we would label something as other if it's not an impala and say, look at this one. It has an interesting species, but it's not an impala. Or it's not this category that we know are very common. And things like that. So that's Yuri there working on a bit of this work. Okay, so we are talking about ecosystems and conservation. We need to understand the interplay between various components. When you are trying to conserve something like a forest, you may also be interested in the water catchment areas, right? So our group has also done a little bit of work on water resource monitoring. And in particular, there's a catchment area called the Moringato catchment. So this is Kenya. This is Nyeri County, where I'm from. And this is our university. And this is the Moringato catchment. There's a river flowing there. On the left is actually another catchment we also do work on, called the Wasongiro. But anyway, so what do? We build and deploy sensor systems that will collect data. And here, the idea is to collect a simple parameter which you can relate to a more complicated concept. And here, so we are measuring simply the level, the stage, okay, of the river. And we want to connect it with the wider catchment by looking at the interplay between river level data, rainfall data, and things of, like even the land use of that area, okay? And so we build the hardware, we build the wireless sensor network systems that we need to collect the data, and then we also need to do some modeling. So we need to understand that there is interplay. Before you see water in the river, it comes as rainfall. It interacts with, the entire catchment before it finds its way as runoff, right? So we've been actually working very closely with this organization called the Trans-Africa Hydrometeorological Observatory. I don't know if you've heard of TAMO, but they have a number of weather stations. And what we have now are river level monitors. So we want to interact those two sources, and not just for their own sake, for understanding the conservation of this water catchment area, okay? Because we believe there are certain things. For example, let me show you a plot. So this is, in red you have the stage, the river level. And you then have here the rainfall, right? The interplay between these two parameters can tell you a lot about what's happening. For example, if your water catchment it doesn't have enough trees and there's less percolation, there'll be very little lag between the rainfall and the peak in this stage measurement, right? So it's almost like everything is running off, all right? So understanding the interplay between these two is the realm of machine learning now, okay? And then pointing out to problems. Here there is a potential problem. Can you check whether how this catchment looks? Is it being degraded? And now doing this on a wider scale is why we want to work with machine learning. Okay, so as I wind up, a final thing, we are talking about catchments. You can also use AI to look at reforestation or reforestation. And here, a key theme is the issue of monitoring. We have a lot of tree planting initiatives in Kenya. And you saw in the first few slides when we were talking about the 5 things you could do to save the planet, tree planting came up. But there's one thing about there's a difference between planting a tree and growing one, right? You want the tree to grow, and we need to monitor its growth. And how one would do that is to measure biophysical parameters of height, diameter at breast height, and these sort of parameters. But obtaining this data is not easy. So how do we do this? We've tried to develop systems which will leverage computer vision. So I take a picture of a tree and I'm able to extract its biophysical parameters. So this is a student of mine. We were doing a survey in a forest in Kenya in a planted stand. And this is a stereo camera. So just like human eyes, you're able to get distance because we have 2 eyes, we are able to extract certain biophysical parameters using this device. And then we can take the picture and tell you that this tree is approximately 3.6 meters or 3.5 meters tall and has a certain crown width. But then we are also interested in looking at things from above. So I told you about AI helping you make sense of remote sensing data. So we collect drone images, and so with an image like this, you could imagine asking questions like, I took an image a year ago, I've taken an image now, what is the survival rate? And what are also the changes in certain biophysical parameters, like crown width, and even height, because with a drone image, you can get aspects of height. Okay, so, and here comes in now machine learning. Neural networks will be able to tell you that I put in this segment and I estimate that these are the trees. You see that there are some missed detections, and that's where we need to fine tune on local data. This is the model coming out of the box. But we need to do some local work of actually fine tuning the models. Right. Okay, so really, I've talked about a few different projects, but I hope you see that they're all connected. We're looking at an ecosystem from a holistic point of view. We are looking at data from the forest. The forest is part of the catchment. We are looking at the water. We are also looking at the species within the ecosystem. So you focus on an indicator like a birds or bats. And I think we all agree that conservation is multifaceted. And I think AI has the potential to complement efforts by domain experts. So really, we have no business being involved in any of this work if we are not accompanied by an expert, like Prof. Bala. If we are by ourselves, we are playing games. I think we need to also exploit AI to be able to allow us to collect a lot of data and then mine it to be able to make sense out of that data. And hopefully I've shown you that a local ecosystem can work in these areas. You know, all that work I've shown is done by students under my supervision. So it's done within Dedan Kimathi University, and it can be done anywhere else. And we need to really help our young local researchers to start doing this sort of work. So, yeah, some of this work has made it into some publications. So I think we'll be able to share these slides, and so all the work ends up published. And the lead authors are often the students. And so funding, as we've had, is also critical. Luckily, we've been supported by Data Science Africa. Even Safaricom is a local mobile phone provider, and other companies like you see there. And thank you very much. I hope we'll have time for questions. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for the beautiful presentation. Yes, now we'd like to take questions. Please, if you have questions, you can ask questions. I'm sure it was able to come down to our level. There's a lot of, work and technicalities concerning artificial intelligence. But the beautiful thing is that we can apply it as ecologists, as biologists, and the application makes it beautiful. So I'm sure we were able to relate a whole lot with the presentation. So I expect feedback, comments, and questions for you before you take a seat. After then, the reporters can get ready for their report. Questions, comments? Okay, sir. Doctor.
Thank you very much. Well, again, it's been a lovely presentation. While we were applying for this, I was saying technology, what are we doing with technology? I said, well, okay, sorry. While we were applying this, when the topic was suggested, I was saying, how is technology becoming an engineer all the way into contribution? But I had a very large heart, then welcome this, and it's been a lovely delivery. And to just blew my mind when you're bringing in the case studies of localizations, and then because these are things that we are actively working with right now both for birds and for bats. I mean, we actually have quite large collections for call libraries for what we are building now for bats. But of course, I think I still wanted to go deeper. I think if you began to teach us something we're going to learn tomorrow already. We already began learning already from this. And what my interest basically right now is what are models that you come about to use, and how many bats or how many birds are you successfully being able to identify using AI. I think that's my own significant interest. We know that a lot has been done in Europe, in South Africa, concerning bat libraries currently, and even for birds in North America. But for Africa, we're really not yet there when it comes to call libraries and being able to, because these are tools that are going to be very important when it comes to education for teaching young folks. They can go out with their mobile phones and they just listen to call, and then they look at and they know exactly what bird, among common birds or bats that we have in the environment. So I don't know what level or what stage of development needs to be that, but I can see long collaborations coming out of this. Thank you.
Okay, so that's part of what that's in progress and has been just building up. So the one thing that we've been struggling with is the fact that we need to first solve the data problem, do a lot of data collection and data annotation. So when you go on something like Zinocanto and you try and get sufficient data for East African species,
you find that of the order, and maybe this is a bit outdated, but we were able to build models for the common species and the ones with easy calls. So something like a Hatlabs Turaco is easy to build. Even just the way you heard that sound, the machine will be able to identify it very well, simply like that. What ends up being challenging is when you have a bird with actually a song, okay, and then getting enough data for those. So it's a bit hard to put a number to that, and it won't be all, okay? So, but in East Africa, we are talking of the order in the upper, like of the order 50, that have nice calls that are robust enough that you can actually reliably say, okay, this system works for this. However, what I mean is that we keep building and exploring other techniques. There is a new area in machine learning called few-shot learning, where you try and build systems with very little training data. And one of my students is exploring using that for birds, so that even if we just have 2 or 3 calls, as an example, we can build a reliable classifier. So essentially, hopefully, we can really be able to solve for every, but also we can do it in another way. We can use it to be able to say, okay, here is all the data I collected in the fields, and then tell you that these are the common ones. Zero in on this one. This one the AI doesn't know, but we suspect it's an interesting audio feature. Can you take a listen? Which is still useful. Yeah.
I think what Taya was saying is we do not have any call library in Africa. We do have calls of different species. I have over 70 species of bats in East Africa, in Kenya, particularly in Kenya. So what basically he's saying is that we need to work together to annotate those calls, develop algorithms, so that ultimately, using technology, we can develop automated call libraries for birds of our regions. So that ultimately, we can send those birds where we have after them on the basis of acoustics alone. You can study habitat use, looking at that activity, looking at how they live in habitats, and run those calls through a library, an automated library. And so we need to work with him I was talking to him this morning so that they can help us develop those libraries. And that will be the first for Africa. There's no way in South Africa. They have a library. They just have individual course, like I do.
Let's work together. I think that's the thing.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My question actually is not too far from what Dr. Tai said. Concerning the acoustics of yes, there are not there's many library for West Africa, top of Nigeria. And from my own experience, identification of that is quite tricky based on the morphological identification. Sometimes, and especially for that, some of the species are not even properly identified in this part of the world. I believe we have an accurate number of the species over in Nigeria. So, sir, I don't know, in terms of technology advancement, it seems in your region, you guys have gone more far in echolocation, and birds' calls is very difficult because since it's not really audible for you to hear it, it's something you have to use technology to kind of, and I know there will be much variation even within species with your location, and yeah, there will be variation within species. So I don't know, is there any avenue for young individuals to also benefit, from, because if you create models, the models is for your own region. We need to create models that is specific for our own region. Because not really, yeah, it might be able to apply here, but probably not too accurate. So I don't know, is there any possible way that we can work on, or is there any way that we can gain learning, or I don't know, something that we can work out on? So.
Yeah, if I get you, I want to say that anything we would want to produce it will almost be, the best way to produce it would be accompanied by a recipe for local adaptation. So let's say something works in the East African context, or even in Europe. The thing you change are the data, okay? But for example, the unsupervised techniques that I was mentioning earlier, those are essentially what you do is you throw in, you put in the data and it tries to organize it into categories. It doesn't know it's coming from Nigeria, it's coming from East Africa, it's coming from wherever. So I think that's where we need to really work together, because some of these methodologies, if we can show, for example, that it makes sense in the East African context, it makes sense in the West African context, the impact is much broader. And we should be trying to solve the problems and have them scale globally, but starting charity begins at home. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I'm Larry Amoshon from Bowen University. Whenever we embark on research, the leitmotif of it is to find solution, most especially to our immediate environment. There are so many scholars who are of the view in Africa that we should embark on Afrocentric educational system so that we don't import technology that are not compatible with our environment. Having said that, the use of artificial intelligence and the issue of conservation, how can we in Africa find a lasting solution to our problem, taking into consideration the Western idea of mineral extraction, whereby our forests have been gone into almost extinction. And that equally explains why so many places are contending with how to embark on regenerative approach to our forest. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's a difficult one. So if I got you, you're asking about whether we should be embarking on an Afrocentric approach to things. I have a bit of, I'm a very proud African, but I also feel like knowledge has a universal quality about it. And I think that we can gain a lot from I think that if we focus sufficiently on fundamental sciences, mathematics, and also have a lot of love for our nations. When you put those two together, or three or four things together, then it becomes Afrocentric. Because I'm not a politician, I find some other approaches are almost political. Our goal is to really solve problems and solve them in a scientifically rigorous manner. And I think that is a useful thing for us to do. And I think when you have sufficient scholarship, and scholarship with a sufficient voice, we can push back on a lot of this extraction of our resources without, we should be able to say, for example, we have conducted a study at location X, and due to this extractive industry Y, it has resulted in our species being degraded, purely scientific, and we are defending our ecosystems that way. I think that's one approach. I don't know we can have a chat about it.
I think I just wanted to add that there are Western solutions that are, and if you said it ably, that are not compatible with us. However, the science aspect, we can actually learn from them and customize, like what he's talking about, customize what they have done in a good way to our needs, to our people, to our resources, and then come up with African solutions, to addressing African problems. So, including funding, because our governments, our priorities, and that's politics, are kind of like not right. Their priorities, our governments are kind of lopsided. They rarely fund research. I don't know about Nigeria, but rarely is research given a priority that it deserves. And rarely can we develop without research. So if we can emphasize the fact that we can prescribe our own solutions, because we can do it, because we have resources, including those mines we're talking about, including those forests. If we can use those resources for our own people, for our own solutions, we can do it. But we can learn. We can completely dismiss the Western ideas. But we can learn from what they are doing, but customize them to our needs. Customize them so that we have solutions that address, including culture. Because some of the things that are prescribed from the West are completely off the mark, completely out of the way, and they don't work. But they are forced down our throats because they are funding us. Okay? Why don't we fund our own? And we have resources. So if we can be able to curtail, I repeat, if we can curtail corruption and save resources to be used locally, we can go far. This conference is funded by Bowen University. There's no funding from overseas. Is there? Exactly. We can do it. The thing is gaining the courage to do it. And we can do it. And show those people that we are not subjective to them. Starting small, we can. Yes, we can. Barack Obama.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mana, for your presentation. I'm sure it, anywhere you bring conservation issues, it brings a lot of interest. And of course, there are diverse ways of looking at all those things. I just want to add my voice to the issue of conservation. I was very interested, one of the first slides you showed, where you had one man doing what he was doing. My PhD is on conservation biology. Sincerely, if you need to do a good conservation, you must bring the people into it. This has been said so many times. And for any conservation initiative or support or engagement, if there is no concern for the people who are part of that area you're talking about, you can't talk of conservation. And that's why you talk about, alternatives. You are telling somebody not to use the forest. What alternative have you provided? You are telling him not to do this, not to do that. What alternative have you provided? In what way have you understood his culture based on those things? Just as we are hearing about Bowen and the bats. What are you doing to solve their own understanding of the bats that will help you? Just as Paul said, most of these agencies that fund this research that we do, they dictate the pace. And so if you're not careful, you won't get the money. So you have to find a way of using that money to answer your local questions. I think I will leave it at that level. We'll continue on that because conservation is very interesting. But I'm very interested about the Turako you spoke about. AI, as you've said, is to help the cumbersome aspect of data collection. I am a field man. Taye will tell you. I did my work at Obudukati Ranch. It's a very rough terrain. When you talk of point counts, you do point counts because the terrain is rough. If not, it's easier to do line transects. You can generate more data. And so you did that for the Turako, trying to get the calls and all that. And I heard you spoke about fragmentation, which is my area of study. My work was the effects of fragmentation on three threatened bird species on the Obudu Plateau, which are, some of them were endangered, some of them were critically endangered. So you are talking about taking these, just their calls, and then knowing they are here or they are not there. How are you able to look at other factors that comes with fragmentation, which is patch size, which is isolation distance, which is age effects and all that? Do you have any of this AI that you have developed to address those aspects? Thank you.
Okay, so the answer to the last question is no. But again, everything here is work in progress. And so the first thing is to develop something that will tell you present or not present, and then move on from there. And then, yeah, I think I appreciate the comments that you have made, and I think we need to really keep on talking, because I think knowing that there's so much expertise here, so that when you're even speaking about fragmentation, there's an expert on fragmentation. That shows you should be careful when you're giving talks.
So you can measure different organisms, present in those fragments, in those patches, as a proxy of understanding how fragmentation will affect different organisms. You can do that, different cells.
But the comment you made about including the people is very powerful, and I think
is what we really should, as scholars, need to always take. That you can't do the work and leave the people out of it. I think that's a powerful take home.
Okay, and thank you very much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. I'm by name Oladiji Israel Oluwadarasimi from Ahmadu Bello University and also an intern at Bowen University here. My question is about the acoustic recorder. You know, we're talking about bats and they have a roosting site which is on top of the tree. Like, is the acoustic recorder very strong to hear the wave of the sound of the bat under the ground level? And also, you showed a slide the other time about the pictures taken by a camera stand that was fixed. Okay, I want to ask, maybe those cameras can do identification to species levels, because there are sometimes I took some pictures with my phone as a young scholar. I would use Google Photos. I noticed there are some things you can't find using Google Photos, like for identification. So I want to ask, maybe there are some things we don't know, maybe they have done some things on it. And for the acoustic recorder too, can you hear the sound to the species level, like
Okay. So
the taxonomic? Do you understand what I'm saying, sir?
I understand you. So I want to maybe answer it different. So here is the thing. The camera trap can capture the image. What happens after you capture the image is now the power of the AI. Because what you do is you can be able to use, there are quite a number of data sets of camera trap images which you can use to build systems which will identify to species level. But even we've discovered in working with some partners that, for example, it may be able to tell it's a zebra, but it won't tell whether it's a common zebra or a grave zebra, something like that. So then you then work with that person to get the data of the grave zebra versus the common zebra and fine-tune. That's you saw me talking about fine-tuning the systems. And all that is doable. There are sort of recipes for doing that. So the power is in the technology. You get the data, but you pass it through an AI system that's capable of doing all these things, and you can build them actually. Then the same applies to the acoustic. So there are two things there. There is the issue of capturing the audio, and that's also dependent on the power of your microphones. And also because there's going to be attenuation of the signal, etc. So that's really a question of where you mount. So for example, in the data we collected, we have some story buildings, and we would put it outside at a level of maybe 10 or 15 meters above the ground. So it's not at ground level. And so you have to adapt your data collection mechanism depending on where you believe those things will be echolocating, and I believe, but I'm stepping out of my comfort zone.
Prof, you want to say something? Okay.
I hope I answered your question.
Oh, you want to say? Okay. Yeah, mine is, I know as ecologists we work on difficult terrains. And I don't know if you've ever thought of probably using drones, maybe to take cameras or to capture sounds and things like that, because I know sometimes it's difficult for us to get to some places. Even because I work on water, even sonar inside water, maybe it is possible. I don't know if you've done that. Secondly, the static camera traps. Have you ever experienced primates removing or destroying at any point in time your experience? Because that's one of the problems that you would have when you start putting static camera traps, especially primates. I don't know if that is okay. And then lastly, this one is just a personal question. When you were talking about the model about your work on the water level rainfall, would you consider velocity over the water level?
Okay.
You understand? Because I know velocity, you understand, may also have to do with the land use and so on like that. Those are just my questions.
Okay. So with drones, I showed some work where we were using them to count the trees. And so we've explored collecting drone data, and especially for such applications. For applications where we are looking at audio, I'm not so sure. I haven't explored that. But for image capture in forestry, so there was that thing we've tried to do. You talked about, so yes, for drones, yes. Yeah, and I think they are an interesting data source, because then since they are images, and machine learning and AI is very successful in images, very successful. Camera, not yet. Now for primate damage, we've had incidences of primate damage. We even have pictures of the primate, the suspect, before and after damage. So actually before, because after then you notice there's nothing. But so we've taken a few of those. But So we've had a few issues. The one solution is we try and make these things low cost, and they are only able to damage something like the actual motion sensor, which is also quite cheap, and the solar. They can tear off the wires. So they've done that. What we also had is in our water monitoring project, a baboon, we believe, because it could only have been a primate, broke the antenna. So we now built another proper cage. So we encounter those problems and solve them. Please remind me the last. You talked about, do you mean now like as opposed to just the stage, the discharge? The discharge. Yeah, so discharge is a bit of a more difficult problem, but you can convert them using those discharge curves. There are certain curves which you can estimate based on the channel. You can then relate the height to the approximate discharge. But all that is, so they are called rating curves, which actually the civil engineers use them a lot. It's easier to measure because it's non-contact and you don't need anything in the water. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
We have one question. Since you are a rapporteur, we'll come back to you when it's time.
Prof, thanks for the presentation. I want to ask towards the aspect of AI being biased towards animals that are not shy, kind of. Some species of animals are kind of bold. When you talk about mammals and birds, bats are quite shy, except for the eidolons. Even the eidolons, they're actually shy. But because they've been with humans for some time, so they have learned to kind of defend their representation in a way. So I want to find out if there is any thought about developing something that will conquer that aspect of some of our bat species that are quite shy. I know that there are some species that are canopy loving. Even with our triple-I, they will not come into the net. I mean, our triple-I nets, our triple-I canopy nets, they won't come into it. Yet we need them to be able to say, identify that we have this species around, linking it with the call libraries for the bat acoustics, because even for the bat acoustics, for the acoustics, you need the bat to recognize the call, then over time, we can keep monitoring. So I want to find out if there is any thought in that direction. Like Prof said, that it's quite tasking to be in the field to look for bats. There are some that, no matter the amount of time you spend in the forest, you can't encounter them. So if we can have something to overcome that barrier, just a thought.
Yeah, I think, and I definitely will not offer any solution, but I think one thing that may be interesting is to explore data collection mechanisms which would allow us to now be able to collect the data of these shy species. So if it's, I don't know, I think it will be an interesting interplay of being able to collect a lot of data and being able to process it. Now the AI comes in the data processing. I don't know, and I don't want to say anything here about but I would imagine that if we can find ways to, for example, get the equal, I know you're saying you need to capture it first before you get the call, but is that necessarily true? I don't know. Is that
We have to capture these bats. There's no two way about it. We have to capture them. For us to use that AI, we have to find ways in which we have to capture them. And misnetting is just one of them. And that misnetting can also imply several other methods, not just at ground level, but also at canopy level. So triple high nets, but also capturing at
at waterholes in dry areas. So they come out, those high flyers, free-tailed birds will come out and fly at waterholes. So that we have that data. But also looking for where they roost, capturing them at roost. So at the end of the day, for the AI, for the experts of AI and technology guys to come in, we have to have a core library knowing that this species is called at this frequency. And this is its parameters. So that these guys can come in. So there are other methods, that complementary methods that can be used, not just misnetting, including hub traps. Because there are other birds that are so smart that will avoid misnets, but they can easily be caught in hub traps because they fly in clutter, in vegetation. And misnets are easily visible. And so we complement our methods so that at the end of the day we have calls of species that are, like you are saying, shy. Species that are rarely caught in misnets, but we can catch them in other methods so that I release them, record them as they fly away, and I know these species, Taphozoas irrigata, Taphozoas perforators, calls at 1 kilohertz. And on that, then the AI guys can come in so that with the AI machine or artificial intelligence, we can develop a library so that we can study them without having to capture them. But capturing them is mandatory. It's critical. We have to.
Okay.
Can we celebrate Professor Chira? Yes. I think, am I coming closer to the name, sir?
You need to come for remedial.
Oh, wow. Maybe I should just give up. I'm not a give-upper, but... All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Please, let's celebrate him better. I think we've had a very rich session, opening and even now, because I'm not a biologist, neither am I an ecologist. I'm only a sociologist. But a lot of things that I've seen and heard here in the last few minutes have really taught me that there are things we need to learn. I listened to Professor, I don't want to call the name, Chira. All right. I listened to Professor Chira, and I heard during his session things like bat velocity or sound velocity, and then through his presentation, I got to know there's something like shy bats, camera shy, and all of those things. And I'm beginning to ask, is this still biology or sociology? Because shy are human attributes rather than animal attributes. But again, I think this is beginning to open up opportunities that we can engage and appetizing us into the sessions we are going to have in the coming minutes when it's time for different people's presentations. If we have really been inspired by the last two guest presentations, I want us to celebrate them with a very warm hand one more time. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for all of the comments we've gotten and all of the deep lectures we've had. At this point, we're supposed to have our rapporteurs come up to give us a brief on what we've had. Do we take all three, sir, or we take just two? Prof, do we take just two, or we have all three rapporteurs? All right. So I'll be calling on the first rapporteur for the event so far to come up stage, and that will be in person of Mr. Oladeji Israel. Let's celebrate him. Is he here? All right. Mr. Oladeji Israel, you have 3 minutes to talk to us, and after you, Mr. Gwom Thomas or Dr. Gwom Thomas should get ready to also give us a brief. And these people are like us. They were participating but also documenting on our behalf. So can you come up, Mr. Oladeji? Let's put our hands together for him.
Thank you very much, sir. Following the protocol on ground, I just want to talk about the things I've been able to jot down about the presentation. I'll actually start with Professor Paul Webala, who was talking presenting to us about money, how to get funds, how to apply for funds, and how to actually prepare a proposal, and how do you write a successful proposal. I think he actually gave us a diagrammatic representation of a guy proposing to a lady. That was as if you are actually begging for a proposal. I can actually put it in that format. And we could see I think tigers. There's a diagram of a tiger trying to attack. I feel like they have actions that they could actually take the proposal by force with their presentation. That's the diagrammatic representation on my own, the literal meaning. But the other person of the man actually proposing to a lady, the lady could actually reject or accept. But the one for the tigers, they can actually, there are three, they will take over so it will not be able to escape. So I can actually say when you actually write a good proposal, you'll be able to get it whether or not. Like, you just have to get it. But if you actually have a proposal that is not well written, that you not follow all the procedure he has listed for us earlier, it will be as if you are begging them to actually give you a proposal. But when you actually have follow all the details, because he was actually enlisting some things about us, that there are some proposals that are actually going to give some guidelines for you to follow. So if you follow, okay, this proposal is supposed to have a 30-page something, it's not be more than 30 pages. We should actually give them what they want. If it is double space, we should follow the due procedure, and we can see that we are going to get the proposal. And he was also talking about the PI, the principal investigator. Like, there are some qualified, and it was also, I could actually get a spirit for young scientists like us, that we can also apply for a proposal, that we just have to follow the right guidelines and procedure. So I'm going to jump to the second presenter, which is Professor Kara Menan. So because of my time, I'll just talk about the artificial intelligence he actually talked about. I've actually learned a lot of things. So I was just thinking about when we went on a field trip in Zaria. Then we have to be carrying guidebook just to be checking the species of animals and all. But with now, I think artificial intelligence has taken us far away. That I just have to take a picture. You said there's a stand, we can place a stand camera. And I don't know, maybe there's actually a movable camera we can also be using to take pictures. And the camera is going to, the AI is going to do this thing for us to the species level, identification of the animal to the species level. So I've learned a lot of things that I don't have to be stressing myself to be carrying a guidebook or a field guidebook. But I have artificial intelligence to solve all the problems for me. So I don't have to be reading a lot, since I have artificial intelligence to do this thing for me. And also I learned about some data science, where we can actually get fund from the USAID. He listed it in his presentation. I think with this few points of mine, I can able to convince you that this thing.
I was almost asking myself, that is it a debate? So I said, no, I'm sure it's his style. But when he finished and he said, with these few points of mine, I just knew it was actually a debate. Thank you for the debate, and you won. Thank you. But I'm happy that he was able to call our attention to some of the keynotes that we had and that he took during the different presentations. The next person, thank you so much. God bless you. The next person I'm going to be calling up to take the second part of our repertoire presentation is Mr. Gwom Thomas. Let's celebrate him as he comes forward. He's from Jos, and I share history in Jos. So I'll just greet him in our native language in Jos, and he's going to respond. Ya yo malam.
Lafiya lau.
Ka ci abinci?
Na ci na koshi.
Wallahi mun gode Allah. Gaskiya. Can you celebrate us? Celebrate us, celebrate us. Oh, you are jealous. It's understandable.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, professors and distinguished colleagues. Like you mentioned, my name is Gwom Thomas from Aplori, Jos. During the first talk that was carried out by Professor Paul Wabala, he reminded me that funding is not a charity thing, but is a support to carry out research. And for me to be able to be funded, I need to have a good proposal. And that is stemming from a wide scope of research and reading. He also mentioned that I need to really showcase my expertise to the awarding body to get to know that I'm capable of doing that work, or the PIs that I'll be collaborating with are capable of really helping me to run that work. So in doing that, I need to know that the proposal is not a coercion for money, and it's not for me to extort money from anyone, but just to present my brilliant idea to the body and to show them a plan of how I intend to achieve that research idea. And in doing that, I need to show them issues that are there, boiling issues within the scope of my study, and methods I intend to use to go about solving that issues, and also to show them benefits. It could be to scientific community, and it could be to the general public. So with that, I need to show them a feasible budget to really show them that I'm out to do the work, not to just grab money out of their hands. So that is a way to present that. Then I need to go back to my proposal and check that I write it very well, following the guidelines that the awarding bodies are there, or they've spelled out. And I need to be so open to my colleagues to allow them to criticize my writing. And after that, I need to rewrite, and I need to read it again. And if need be, I need to rewrite again. So he emphasized that writing is not a hasty thing. I need to really spend time to write to ensure that all the guidelines are followed. That will help me to pass a lot of checks that the awarding body must have put in place. Having satisfied all that, then I think it's going to be the time I submit. And he emphasized that as a young scientist and researcher coming up, I shouldn't be afraid of trying the big awarding bodies. And with a lot of things that he has shown, I know that after the research I need to publish, that will really show that the work has been justified and done well. So with that said, I will take this, a brief from the second talk, who is in person of Professor Chira Wamena. He brilliantly talked about technology and almost made me fall in love with technology, but I've been taken to the biological sciences. Thank you, sir. He showed us how beautiful technology can be intertwined into ecology and conservation. And with that marriage, you can adapt the kind of siblings you bring out of, or the ideas that will come out of. And I love the way he stood here, adapting to different fields. And questions that were rising, I see that there is this opening to go back and forth between science, that's ecology conservation, into engineering, and back into ecology conservation too. So I think with that marriage, it's a beautiful fertilization of ideas that will be coming in there. So it's opening up a big field for African scientists and knowledge to be fertilized well there. One thing that really energized me was when Dr. Tai was mentioning that this is an indigenous thing. I felt so proud that we are bringing out something good from Africa, and it's our thing, and we are modeling it to our situation, not just thinking of how the engineers will still replicate things like the cars that we have, but now the ideas are coming from current or happening challenges, and we're trying to solve them. So I see a brighter future for us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Guam. Indigenizing knowledge production on bats. And I think it's something we should really be proud of, because from the lips of everyone who has spoken today, all we've heard is how that bats should be indigenized. And in this case, an African reality will be very novel. And I feel that there are so much that can still be talked about, but because of our time, we'll have just one more person come up stage to share the last light on the summaries we have so far. And to that end, please join me as I welcome up stage Mr. Joseph Pam Jazat. Is he around? All right. So over to you for the last summary. Is he here? Mr. Milari? Okay. Are you the one? He's not in? Oh, sorry, what's the name? I was given a different name. What's the name?
My name is Okwanachi Ojomo.
Okay, Mr. Okwanachi. I'll leave the rest for us. Please, let's celebrate him.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Okwanachi Ojomo from AP Leventis Ornithological Research Institute, JOS. So, in summary, everybody have talked about what we have learned. But me personally, I want to say Professor Webala talked much on grant and grant writing and all that. Yes, and one thing that caught my attention was that the aspect he talked about, your history, you preaching yourself to them. Because there's one thing that I've come to realize is that we have a lot of researchers, we have a lot of brilliant people, but the truth is they cannot market themselves, which is a very bad thing. So yes, he made mention of that and throws significant importance in achieving, when you preach yourself, they will have confidence because they don't have the time to come and see what you are doing physically. It's you that will tell them what you are doing. And also, in writing a good grant proposal, it's not something you have to do in a rush. It's something you have to take your time. It's not something you just do one night and you say you want to submit. No. And also, referees are important. Referees. And I believe that once you are writing a grant proposal, you need to attach a referee that is particularly an authority in that particular field. If you are writing something on ecology, you probably find a referee that is an expert in that particular field. If it's conservation, you have to find someone that's an authority, especially from your native country or probably where you want to execute that particular research. And also, Professor Maina also delivered a lecture on leveraging artificial intelligence. And seriously, I really want to commend Professor Maina for his presentation. It's not really easy intertwining different aspects of different fields into machine learning, and especially machine learning. I will not lie. In short, online developing models alone is quite difficult and it's very knowledge intensive. And and some of the things he talked about was the role of AI, using remote sensing and traditional surveys to answer some kind of ecological and conservation questions. And also he talked about the database for calls, that is Dinocanto, and also using of camera traps, reforestation. All these are, their methodologies, probably something we have not even started implementing in Nigeria yet. So this is how will I put it now, is a challenge to us, especially as researchers in Nigeria, that we should start, looking towards this direction. We should not just rely on the routine, traditional way of doing research. We should, try and go further. And I believe once we can implement these methodologies, I believe we'll achieve more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so as we prepare for the next round of activities, I would like to just say a few things, at least in a minute, about the comments we've had so far. I think that when Professor Dami was speaking, he also cited or talked about fragmentation a while ago. And, you know, I noticed something that struck me when Professor Chira was speaking. Sorry. And he said that I saw his mood changed. The look on his face suddenly changed. And I was wondering what happened. And I saw suddenly, after coming as an expert, speaking from the lens of expertise, acknowledging the new areas that he had not heard of. And for me, that was a lesson for me as a younger scholar coming up, that someone can be that much of an expert, being a guest speaker, and still acknowledge that, okay, there are things I don't know, there are things I'm just hearing. And he was proposing that these are possibilities and prospects in the area of research that we're talking about. And I think that another comment that came while Professor Chira was speaking was that people have been underemphasized in BAT research. People need to be toned up as variables, not just for data, but also in methodology. You know, you have a data from someone, secondary data, and then you are limited. It came when someone asked about pictures, and he said you can actually meet the person who generated that data to produce further or underneath data for you, so you can have a more comprehensive data interpretation. And I think this has been a quite rich session that we've had. So at this point, without further waste of time, we'll go straight to briefing on workshop training. I think that is what we have next now. Briefing on workshop and training. That's going to be taken by my brother, Dr. Temidayo Adeyanju. And I want us to, okay? We have two Dr. Adeyanjus here. So you have to check who in particular we're referring to. So Dr. Adeyanju misses. Can we celebrate her better?
It's okay. I'm a brother. When you start doing wildlife, you become your gender will change. Because I heard that women in wildlife we are rare. Let me use that word. Very rare. So they use E for us. Okay. Profs, thank you for the two presentations. We are very, very grateful. And for Guam that has been doing marriage and fertilization, let me tell us, in BAT, miracles used to happen. So if you have not joined the BAT team, please think about it. When you start doing BAT, you have children, you get married. If like Guam said, fertilization will happen. Hello? Okay, I don't want to say amen. Okay. All right, so I want to brief us on our training. We are going to have training and we are going to have workshops. So, and for our workshop starts today, we are going to be having BAT genomics. That has to do with more of molecular characterization and all of those. So, and we will love that. Please get involved. I know some of us will not be interested. And like I had Prof said the other time that we need to make what we are doing Afrocentric. So let's come around and see how this plays out in genetics and molecular environment. Tomorrow, okay, before I go on, please, if you are presenting today, we would like that you send your presentation to the media team or to the technical team so they can upload it for you. Okay. Tomorrow we'll be having morning session, very early morning sessions. So you are not just here just to hear, but you're also here to learn. I know we have postgraduate students here, people that want to venture into BAT research. So I want to introduce you to one or two things during this conference. So we'll be training us on one or two things. So tomorrow we'll be having BAT survey from 7 to 8:30 a.m. in the morning. Before we finish, we'll communicate the meeting point to us. Please, 7 for 7. I'm the one in charge. So if you come late, I will write your name. We will not give you breakfast if you come late. Okay, and then subsequently we'll have mist netting training. That's for another bat. So mist netting, want to teach you how to set up mist nets. We'll teach you how to do different techniques on the field, where to put your mist net. We'll do different techniques on what to do when you are in difficult terrain. In the evening, we'll have evening session. Because who can tell me what kind of animals are bats? What kind of animal? Are they, They are nocturnal. They are more active at night. The ones you have open in towns, we'll still teach you more about them. So we are going to come out tomorrow in the evening. Before dinner we come anyway, but the moment we finish our dinner, we'll come around and then we'll teach us how to handle bats, how to put up the net, how to handle the bats, how to bring them out, how to take some measurements. What do you do from one bat? Okay, if you look at the abstract that we have, you find out that we have different people present different things. So from one singular research, we can have a whole lot of information on different fields. We'll also go into a bit of bat acoustics. Professor Maina talked about the aspect of AI in that direction. So we also introduce us a bit to AI. How many of you are interested? So let me know how to channel our energy. If you are interested, raise up your hand. Okay. So, because before you can get the sound of the bat, you have to have the bat in your hand. Isn't it? Isn't it? Okay. And a whole lot and a whole lot like that. And then subsequently also before we finish the training, I believe from today's, the first part of the workshop, which is the genomics, we'll be giving some assignments, and then we expect a feedback or a return, a summit of that assignment. Any question? What time are we meeting tomorrow morning? 7 a.m. So see you around. Okay, questions, please, if you have questions or clarifications on some things. While we are thinking about this, I want to address the postgraduate students amongst us. Please make most of, take this opportunity very, very seriously. I got to meet some of the people we have here today from this type of avenues. And my life has not been the same in this field of research. It has yielded a lot for me. So don't be shy. I don't understand. So be a disturbance. I remember somebody said I was a disturbance. And thank God I was a disturbance, because today I'm no more a disturbance. That disturbance has turned out, for good. No matter how irrelevant you think your question is, ask. The bad thing that you hear is, you are disturbing me, Abi, and that is it. No problem, disturbance is fine. Okay, so please, don't be shy, don't withdraw, don't say, that person's face is so hard, I cannot talk. Oh, please talk. Oh. All right? Bats are not shy. Oh. When you hold them like this, they are very loud. Oh yeah, questions? Okay, I will ask my question. Mayowa, tomorrow, what are we having? The workshops for tomorrow. And the trainings. Bat? Okay, and what else again? Okay, you've forgotten. I won't call Guam. Tunde, what's your name? Blessing. Introduce yourself. Tell us where you are from. What level of... By what time? By 7 a.m. 7 a.m. to 8 Then we also have training on how to set up business and also power acoustics. what did you call it? Bat acoustics. Start getting used to it. Bat acoustics. The sound. Very interesting. Okay. Any question? I will ask my next question. Go on. Good question. Okay, so tomorrow morning, when you are coming out, just come out comfortably. If you have, okay, just come out, wear something you are comfortable in or with in the morning. In the later part of the evening, you have to be well covered in a way so mosquitoes don't bite you. Mosquitoes and insects don't bite you. So just come as you are, comfortable. Okay, sir. Yes, sir. So before the end of today, thank you, sir. Where we will meet will be communicated to us before we finish every other thing. Any other question? Okay, sir. Okay, so, Prof, can I answer this question about a group? Okay, so here in Bowen, there is a team led by Professor Tobatele. Yes. In Africa, okay, also in Nigeria, we have another group. They call them Bat Life. Basically, they are into Bat Initiative, Conservation Initiative. In Africa, we have Bat Conservation Africa. And Professor Wabella is one of our, what do we call them now? One of our lead people that are leading us, directing us. And it was from such team, from such group that I got my first exposure. I've been doing BAT for some time, but thank God that we had such a group that could bring, like you said, bring people together to teach us more about bats and their importance and the different areas of research. So in Africa, we have BCA, Bat Conservation Africa. We also have a group that is more, so it brings in people from different places all over the world, Idolon Monitoring Network. I know one of us here is on that team. Professor Adobadeletu is part of us partially. And what we do is the Idolon health room that you have here that is more prominent here on the campus, we monitor this population throughout the year to know what is going on. Aside that, those are the ones that I know for Nigeria, the ones you have here in Bowen, Bat Life, for Africa. We also have SMACOM. SMACOM has to do with, they do with bat and small mammals. So, but for us here in Southwest, the ones here in Bowen and Bat Life. So these people, they come together, work together, so that we can push forward the gospel of bats. So you can join the Bowen team. I'm sure there is always a place for you, sir. From whatever field, I'm sure we will learn a lot from your indigenous knowledge. So you can meet up with Professor Professor Atobatele in that regard. And on the larger scale from there, they take it up from there. Please, sir, Damilare, Daddy is interested in bats. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay.
And I think it's not out of place if I sit down here and begin to think in that direction. That you want to have an association. That you want to have an association of people that are related to bat and bat studies. I think that is what you are saying.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. So it's something. So from here, we form that group of people. I hope I'm speaking, Professor, sir, am I speaking your mind? That from here, we form that group of people where we come together as an association to go towards that course. Sorry, sir. Ṣé ó ti yé yín báyìí, sir? Ẹ ṣé, sir. Sir, yes,
yeah.
sir.
In continuation with what my big brother said, Professor, in continuation with what Professor Dami said, for instance, I'm a student of international relations. And when we look into what is happening at the global level, globalization has radicalized education in the sense that there is no discipline, either physical science, social sciences, or management sciences, that will not have one or two relationship with other disciplines. And that is the rationale behind my coming here today.
Thank you, sir.
Because ordinarily, some people, when I said that I'm presenting tomorrow to my colleagues in my college, they said that, are you in biology? This is Professor Atobatele's project. You are not there, so what are you going to do? So I will soon present my own paper, looking into the concept of birth from another perspective, of which at the end of the day is going to hinge on environment, food security, and climate change. So what I think we need to do, is just a suggestion, because I'm very, very green in this system, is that anybody that is interested, anybody that really has interest in research, so please get in touch with their different universities, contacts that are equally doing this type of a project. For us, I know where we are going. Anybody that wants to be part of this is either to see Professor Atobatele, who is very difficult to see. Then Professor Woseni is very much available. So that at the end of the day, maybe by next year, the type of conference that is going to take place is going to be from another perspective. And some of us who are equally have some different links, we may easily project the call for paper so that at the end of the day, people will come here in several hundreds. So I think that is the thing that we can do in order to protect our forest, to protect our animals, most especially our mammals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Professor Lee Amuson spent most of his time in South Africa. He just joined us recently.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other question? So this is very much noted, sir. Everything will be communicated back in due course from here, going forward from here. So in case we don't have any other observation or questions, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Adeyanju, for that very rich and vibrant session. At this point, we're supposed to go for lunch, and I know that there's already middle belt crisis happening for all of us. So before we resolve the middle belt crisis by eating our food, we're told that the airport is still trying to fuel their movement, and they will soon be here. So before they arrive, I think we'll do a good job of knowing ourselves more, and it will be good that we